Welcome back to the GSMC Sports Podcast. We just finished up talking about the Nuggets and Celtics game that took place. Now we're going to be moving on to the rest of the action from Thursday night. We will start in Indiana, where the Minnesota Timberwolves played the Indiana Pacers. This was just 12 or so hours after we found out that Karl Anthony Towns is out indefinitely with a torn meniscus in his left knee. We do have a quick injury update on that note, with the fact that he will undergo surgery for that torn meniscus early next week. He is expected to be reevaluated in 4 weeks, and they currently expect him to be back early in the playoffs. Now, obviously, sports medicine and everything has become more and more advanced over the years, but to imagine him coming back from a torn meniscus in just 4 weeks, now again, reevaluated, is obviously different than he's going to be back in 4 weeks, but this is I suppose when you consider how things initially sounded, I guess it is somewhat better than what the case possibly could have been, because you also look at sort of the schedule here with how the play-in tournament games work and the playoffs being pushed back a little bit further than they usually do. Their last regular season game is April 14th, which would be just over 4 weeks, and then they have another week or so until the actual playoffs start. So they'll have some time to possibly try and rehab him and get him back into the action. But I think that the idea of him potentially coming back to fully play in that first round series is maybe a little bit of a stretch. Now, we will obviously have to see as far as that. But getting into last night's game, the first one, the Timberwolves were without Karl Anthony Towns. Anthony Edwards, it looked scary for a moment there at the beginning of the game where he rolled his ankle about 30 seconds into that one, quickly hobbled off to the locker room, but he was able to return a few minutes later, and he took over in this one. He scored 44 points on 35 shots and was terrific down the stretch. I mean, really put the Timberwolves on his back in this one where he had scored 8 straight points, the final 8 points for the Timberwolves in this game. He was initiating all the offense. It was the ball in his hands, and he was creating for himself off the dribble. The Timberwolves have had some questions in terms of their late game offense, and just the lack of real creation that's come with it. It's been very Mike Conley dependent, as we've talked about on this show, but Anthony Edwards just took it into his own hands, was hitting pull-up jumpers from 3, all of it, and he ended up with the ball in his hands with about 15 seconds left in the game. He got put at the free throw line to try and ice the game. He actually missed the second free throw, and instead we saw the Pacers, who, as we all know, love to push the pace. It was with 7 seconds left in this game where Edwards misses the second free throw. The Pacers throw an outlet pass up the court into the hands of Aaron Nesmith, trying to get a layup to go to potentially tie this thing. And Anthony Edwards comes flying in for one of the most incredible, physically impressive blocks that you will ever see. If you haven't already seen the highlight of it, fully recommend it. He gets so high that he actually hits his head on the rim and comes toppling down. Looked like it could have actually been bad in that sense. After the game, he said his head was sore from the rim, and he came down on his wrist a little bit, but they got the win, and he was the catalyst for them. And it was a little bit of a true leadership game, I felt like, for him, where it would have been easy for the Timberwolves to sort of get down. They're having their best regular season, potentially in franchise history, at least since the Kevin Garnett days. And it would have been easy for them to fold a little bit in this one. But the way that he was able to conduct the offense, tell everybody, hey, we still have a chance here. Again, took 35 shots in this game, which was 6 more than he's taken in any other matchup this season. The Pacers are a team. They're good. They're not great necessarily, but still a very, solid competitor. And it's not like it would have been unheard of for this Pacers team to knock off a good team while they're playing at home. So I thought that this was a great performance from Ant, and the way that the Timberwolves were able to rally here sort of goes to show what is in store for them. Now, I talked about this yesterday. I was curious, with how the lineups were going to work out here. They did have Kyle Anderson starting in place of Karl Anthony Towns in this game. They played some of their fourth quarter minutes, though, with the double big lineup of Naz Reid and Rudy Gobert. Naz did also technically close the game for them as they were on offense, and they wanted better shooters in there in terms of intentionally fouling. But I thought that all in all, this was a very solid performance. Naz was good, not great in this game. He scored 13 and had 8 rebounds. He's clearly not the same level of Karl Anthony Towns. I don't think that anybody would argue that. We've seen the offense at times sort of stagger some when Towns hasn't been able to play, but I also don't think it's going to be a drastic regular season fall off for them, and I may be wrong on this one. Sounds like a lot of other people are big time doom and gloom about this whole situation for them, but I still feel like they have a puncher's chance in terms of finishing out this season. You probably expect that Denver is going to overtake them as the 1 seed, but I don't think that the Wolves fall outside of the 3 seed. It's just about statistically impossible, but for the most part, of the idea of them losing out on home court advantage for a first series. Now, in terms of a deep playoff run, obviously they're going to need Towns, but I do feel like they can stay afloat some. Talked about this a lot on the show yesterday, so I don't want to harp on it too much, but not a bad first performance from this Wolves team. Next up, we have the Golden State Warriors, and specifically on this game, because it was coinciding with the Celtics-Nuggets game as well, so I didn't get to give this game my full attention, but they had a double-digit lead in this one, and the big news coming out of it, they were playing the Chicago Bulls. The big news coming out of this is that Steph Curry rolled his ankle with a few minutes left and was not able to finish the game. He was icing his foot afterwards, and they are scheduled to do some imaging on him as I believe today. As the day goes on, sure, we will be keeping you updated on that, but the Warriors end up losing this game. It was very back and forth in the fourth quarter where the Bulls were leading as well, but they also have had some crunch time numbers that haven't been great for them. But with no Curry, it was really harmful for the Warriors in this one, and they end up falling. And I don't think that Steph Curry is going to be out for the rest of the season as it is, but this is a very bad break for the Warriors, who were playing some of their better offense of the season as of late. I know that they got rolled up on when they visited Boston, but that was the end of their road stretch. They came back and responded with a nice win against the Milwaukee Bucks, and now this happens. Very unfortunate for them, We will see how this all plays out, but it's not looking very good. Things already weren't great for the Warriors, but now here we are as they are 33-29, and it doesn't seem like, especially without Curry, that they are going to be able to climb up in the standings. So not a great situation there. The last game we'll talk about here is the Miami Heat and Dallas Mavericks, where this was sort of a big-time statement game for the Mavs because of the rumors that were circulating about the job security of head coach Jason Kidd. Their defense had been horrendous for the past month or so, and things were really bubbling over here, and they turned in a very nice performance against the Heat. They win 114-108. Defensively, I thought that they were really on top of it. What I was most impressed with, which also goes a little bit to speak about some of the concern with them defensively, but they were tremendous, I felt like, on some of those post-ups and paint possessions that the Heat were trying to operate. Derek Lively did a phenomenal job, I thought, against Bam Adebayo, who really struggled in this game. He scored just 14 points on 5 of 14 from the field. All of those attempts, other than 2, they were just a couple, winding shot clock situations. All of them but 2 came in the post. And, Lively's someone where he came off the bench in this game. It's definitely a big-time positive having Daniel Gafford in the building for them, where he can start and take the majority of the minutes if need be, because Lively is still just a rookie, and sometimes asking him to be in these positions and be a pivotal guy for them, the anchor of their defense, you can have your rookie moments. So I think having the option of Gafford is great, but like we saw last night, where Lively is really on top of his game and he's performing well, they can trust him to go out and be the crunch time guy for them, which he was for the most part, other than I believe he got subbed out on an offensive possession just for the sake of intentionally fouling as well. PJ Washington checked in for him. PJ Washington is still struggling a little bit. I think he's just not particularly great at any one thing. I thought that the Mavs, made some right decisions at the trade deadline. I was a huge fan of the Gafford deal. It seemed like whatever was going on with Grant Williams, a little bit behind the scenes there, definitely wasn't panning out the way that the Mavericks had hoped going into the season. So they move on from him. They also move on from a first-round pick in order to make the change to PJ Washington. And it just, he's a very solid player for them, but again, it's just he's not particularly great at anything. His three-point percentage has dropped every year that he's been in the NBA. He's not an incredible defender, and it's still a nice option to have, but in a night like last night, really struggled with efficiency. It's just meh on the defensive side of the ball. So the Mavs get this win and at least can sort of put the Jason Kidd rumors, you would think, to rest, because anything later than last night to fire your head coach and still be able to be a competitive team in the playoff hunt, I think is a little bit of a stretch. So they're going to stick it out with him. But I thought that the way that they were able to bring the defensive intensity, the way that they were sending some doubles in the post, but extremely active hands on the perimeter as well, where you had guys like Jimmy Butler and Bam Adebayo going into the block, and then once they met that second defender, they would try and kick out, and the Mavericks got a couple steals off of those types of possessions, which I thought was a really good sign. I also thought that they did a really good job of offensive rebounding in this one. Lively was a part of that. Gafford was a part of that. There was one possession where Gafford and PJ Washington both grabbed offensive rebounds off of a missed free throw from, I forget who exactly, but That got them some second chance opportunities as Gafford ended up back at the free throw line. So nice win for the Mavs here. As far as the Heat, this is a loss. This is a little bit disappointing, but what you can say positively is that Terry Rozier was very good in this game. He had 27 points, 11 assists, and hopefully we can see some of the efficiency with him turn around. It was really rough to start. He's had some of these bigger games since then, which is a positive, but he's still shooting just 41 and 30 shooting splits since joining the Heat. We know he's a better scorer than that. It's just a matter of putting it all together and finding that consistency. But that is all we have time for on last night's games. We're going to be taking another break, and when we come back on the other side, we will be diving into some of the most recent updates in NFL free agency. So stick with us, and we will be right back.